hated him the first time I saw him, not because he did anything to me personally, but because he had the audacity to sit at my coffee table, me sacred morning spot that had been mine for nearly 2 years. Who does that? Who strolls into a quiet corner cafe in Boston, plops down at the best seat in the house, and looks so damn comfortable doing it? That was Ethan. And from that morning on, he became the thorn in my perfectly controlled, overly scheduled, caffeine-fueled life. The cafe was my sanctuary. The sun always hit the window at just the right angle, the hum of conversation never too loud, the smell of roasted beans grounding me before the chaos of my job as a marketing analyst swallowed me whole. That table, the one near the window with the slightly wobbly chair, was mine. It was where I cleared my head, where I scribbled half-finished stories in my notebook, where I convinced myself that my life was fine, even if sometimes it felt like it was standing still. And then Ethan appeared. Blonde, tall, annoyingly good-looking in that careless kind of way. He wore wrinkled button-ups like he'd pulled them off the floor, jeans a shade too faded, and he had the kind of smirk that made you want to punch him or kiss him. But I wasn't about to admit that last part to myself. "You're in my seat," I had blurted out the first morning. He didn't even look up from his laptop. "Didn't see your name on it." The nerve. I wanted to argue more, but the barista called my name, and all I could do was retreat with my latte and sit at a lesser table by the door, where the draft always crept in when someone entered. I tried not to watch him, but of course I did. He typed quickly, his brows furrowed, lips pursed in thought. He was working on something important, maybe, or maybe he was just scrolling through cat videos. I hated that I cared enough to wonder. The next morning I came earlier. He was already there, with the same damn smirk. "You've got to be kidding me," I muttered under my breath. "Good morning to you too," he replied cheerfully, like we were old friends. And so it began, the silent war over a single table in a small cafe. Except it wasn't so silent. We started throwing sarcastic comments across the table. If I sat down first, he'd slide into the chair opposite me uninvited. If he got there before me, I'd make a show of sitting down anyway, determined not to give him the satisfaction of winning. The baristas started calling us the married couple, and I hated how much I didn't hate that nickname. It should have ended there, just a petty routine between two strangers. But somehow it didn't. The first crack in my armor came one morning when I was running late, my tie crooked, hair a mess from oversleeping after a brutal night at work. I staggered into the cafe, expecting to find him smugly sipping his coffee at our table. But instead he slid a steaming cup toward me the moment I sat down. "Triple shot latte, extra foam. You looked like you needed it." I blinked at him, confused. "How did you know my order?" He shrugged. "You're not exactly subtle." I should have been annoyed. Instead, my chest warmed in a way that had nothing to do with the coffee. That was the day we started talking, really talking. About his freelance photography gigs, about the clients that drove me insane, about books we pretended we had time to read. He was infuriating, but he was also interesting and funny. And sometimes, when his guard dropped, a little sad in a way that mirrored something inside me I never said out loud. The table stopped being a battleground. It became ours. Of course, life has a way of making sure you don't get too comfortable. It was a Wednesday when I noticed the bruises on his knuckles. He tried to hide them, but when he reached for his mug, I saw, purple and raw, like they'd taken a beating. "What happened?" I asked. He froze, then gave a half-hearted laugh. "You should see the other guy." I didn't laugh. "Ethan." His smirk faltered, just for a second, before he looked away. That was the first time I realized that whatever brought him to that cafe every morning wasn't just routine. It was escape. He never said from what, but the silence between us carried the weight of it. And yet, despite the questions piling up in my head, I kept coming back. He kept coming back. We kept colliding in that little corner, our arguments turning into conversations, our conversations turning into something that scared me more than anything else: connection. One evening, when the cafe had already dimmed its lights, he leaned across the table, close enough that I could smell the faint citrus of his cologne. "You ever think maybe this isn't just about coffee?" he asked. My throat tightened, because I had, every single day. That was how the story of us began, not with a grand declaration, not with fireworks. Just two men, fighting over a table, until neither of us wanted to let go of it, or each other. And maybe, just maybe, that was enough. The day everything broke apart wasn't loud. It wasn't even dramatic. It was quiet, and maybe that's what made it so devastating. Ethan stopped showing up. For 3 mornings straight, I sat at our table, staring at the empty chair across from me, waiting for the smirk, the sarcastic comment, the way he always pretended like he hadn't been waiting for me to. But the chair stayed empty. The baristas gave me pitying looks. One even whispered, "Maybe he's sick?" But the gnawing dread in my chest told me it wasn't something as simple as the flu. On the 4th morning, I couldn't take it anymore. I went looking for him. Boston is a big city, but it feels small when you're desperate. I retraced the details I'd gathered from our conversations, his freelance gigs, the neighborhoods he mentioned, the places he liked to photograph. Took hours, but I finally found him. Not in some glamorous photo shoot, not lost in creativity, but sitting on the curb outside a rundown building, his camera bag at his feet, head buried in his hands. I didn't say anything at first, just sat down beside him, our shoulders brushing. He didn't look up. "You weren't at the cafe," I finally said. My voice cracked like I'd been holding my breath for days. He let out a broken laugh. "You noticed." I turned to face him. "Of course I noticed. Ethan, what's going on?" And that was when he told me. About the father who still wouldn't answer his calls. About the clients who never paid him on time, leaving him juggling rent and bills. About the night he got into a fight outside a bar, not because he wanted to, but because someone decided 2 men laughing together were an easy target for slurs and fists. He didn't fight for pride. He fought because he didn't know how else to survive the hate that followed him like a shadow. Hearing it gutted me, because suddenly, every smirk, every sarcastic deflection, every guarded silence made sense. He wasn't invincible. He was just good at pretending. "I don't need your pity," he muttered when he realized I wasn't saying anything. I reached out, placing my hand on his bruised knuckles. "It's not pity. Me. Not wanting you to go through this alone." For the first time since I met him, Ethan didn't have a comeback. He just leaned against me, eyes closed, and let himself be held. But loving him wasn't easy. My friends didn't understand. My coworkers gave me looks when I mentioned his name too often. Even my sister, who I thought would be the most supportive, asked me if I was sure. Like falling for him was some kind of mistake I'd regret. And Ethan carried his own fear. Every time we walked through the city, he'd glance over his shoulder. Every time I reached for his hand in public, he'd hesitate before giving in. We argued. God, did we argue? About being cautious, about being brave, about whether love was enough to shield us from a world that seemed determined to tell us it wasn't. Some nights I went home furious. Some nights he did. But somehow, the next morning, we both ended up back at that cafe table. Too stubborn, or maybe too in libido let go. The turning point came in autumn. There was a street fair downtown, and I begged him to come with me. At first, he refused. Too crowded, too many chances for stares, too many opportunities for the wrong kind of attention. But that morning, when I sat at our table and looked at him with something close to desperation, he sighed, ruffled his blonde hair, and said, "Fine. But if anyone throws a punch, you're the one taking it." The fair was chaos, music, food, laughter. We wandered through it like strangers in someone else's story, until we reached a stall selling handmade rings. Ethan picked one up, simple silver, nothing flashy. He slid it onto my finger with a teasing grin. "Looks like it belongs there." My heart stuttered. Without thinking, I grabbed his hand and laced our fingers together. People might have been watching, but in that moment I didn't care. And for once, neither did he. We walked the rest of the fair like that, hand in hand. Felt like a rebellion, but it also felt like freedom. It's funny how love doesn't solve everything, but it changes how you face it. We didn't magically stop fighting, didn't erase the problems that followed us. But we built something anyway. Morning coffees became sacred, not just habit. Late-night phone calls became lifelines. His photographs started selling more, My job stopped feeling like a trap, and slowly, the noise of the world quieted whenever we were together. One winter morning, snow falling outside the cafe window, he looked at me over his mug and said, almost casually, "You know you're stuck with me, right?" I smirked, echoing his first words to me. "Didn't see your name on me." He reached across the table, brushed his thumb against my hand. "Maybe it's time we fixed that." So here we are now, sitting in the park, autumn leaves swirling around us. He leans against me, our hands intertwined, the same way they were at that street fair. People walk past, some smiling, some not, but for the first time in my life, I don't care. Because this isn't just about a table in a cafe anymore. It's about two men who fought over a seat and ended up fighting for each other instead. And for once, the war is over. We won. Thank you for listening. Don't forget to like and subscribe to stay updated with the latest videos.